Captain Mira Larson stared out of the large observation window aboard the Eclipse, her ship. She had spent most of her career exploring the deep reaches of space, but nothing had prepared her for what she was about to encounter. The faint signal had appeared out of nowhere, like a whisper in the vast silence of the galaxy. It was strange, too weak to be from a normal ship, but still strong enough to be noticed. A distress signal, the kind that meant someone needed help. The signal came from an uncharted planet, orbiting a star in a remote part of space. The planet was located far beyond any known trade routes, in an area where few ships ever traveled. Mira's crew had been on a routine mission, mining valuable resources from nearby asteroids. But the signal was too intriguing to ignore. They changed course and headed toward the source. As they approached the planet, Mira felt a knot form in her stomach. The planet was cold and barren, with vast stretches of rocky deserts and deep canyons. There was no sign of life, not even plant growth. Yet the signal was unmistakable. That Scilar had been sending it for years, maybe longer. Their once great civilization now lay forgotten. Mira had heard of the Scilar, though very few people still remembered them. They had been one of the most advanced species in the galaxy, known for their brilliant technology and scientific knowledge. But when their society had fallen into decline, they had been abandoned by the other civilizations that once depended on their inventions. No one had cared to help when their cities began to crumble and their systems failed. Now, they were just a footnote in history, their existence almost erased from memory. The eclipse entered the planet's atmosphere, and Mira ordered her crew to prepare for landing. The ship's engines roared as they descended toward the surface. The landscape below was bleak, a mix of jagged rocks and empty plains. There was no sign of the Scilar's once advanced cities, only ruins and shattered structures. The planet looked like it had been forgotten by time itself. As the ship landed, Mira stepped out onto the dusty ground, followed by her crew. The air was thin and the temperature was freezing. She pulled her jacket tighter around her, scanning the horizon. The Scilar's distress signal had led them here, but where were the people who had sent it? They followed the signal to an ancient city, its towering structures now crumbling and half buried under layers of dust and sand. The buildings were unlike anything the humans had seen before, sleek and elegant, made of materials that shimmered faintly even in the weak light of the distant sun. Yet, the city was eerily quiet. No signs of life, not even a sound. Mira's team spread out, searching for any sign of movement. They came across a series of underground chambers, hidden beneath the ruins. Inside, they found what they were looking for: the survivors of the Scilar. A small group of frail, elderly beings, their skin pale and their bodies weakened by years of neglect. They looked nothing like the powerful, brilliant creatures that had once roamed the stars. The Scilar looked at them with a mixture of fear and hope. They had not expected anyone to find them, let alone offer help. Mira and her crew were the first visitors they had seen in years, maybe decades. As the humans approached, one of the Scilar stepped forward. His voice was weak but clear. "You are not from here," the Scilar said, his voice trembling. Mira nodded, her heart heavy with pity. "No, we're from Earth. We've come to help." The Scilar looked at her with disbelief. "Why? Why would you help us? We are forgotten, abandoned." Mira felt a surge of compassion. These beings had been left to die, abandoned by the very civilizations they had once helped. Now, all that remained was a handful of survivors, struggling to survive on a dying world. She couldn't understand why no one had come to their aid, why the galaxy had turned its back on them. But she knew one thing for certain: she wasn't going to walk away. Not when they needed help so badly. "We're not abandoning you," Mira said firmly. "We'll help you rebuild." The Scilar's eyes filled with gratitude, but there was also something else: doubt. They had been disappointed too many times before. Would the humans really keep their word? Mira knelt down in front of the Scilar leader, a gentle smile on her face. "We promise. You won't be alone anymore. As Mira's crew began to set up camp and start working on ways to help the Xylar, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. There was much more to be done, and the challenges ahead would be far greater than anything they had faced before. But she was ready. Humanity had always been known for its resilience, and now it was time to show the galaxy what humans were truly capable of. As the days passed, Captain Mira Larson and her crew worked tirelessly to help the Xylar. The survivors were fragile, their bodies weak from years of neglect. But their minds were sharp, and they shared what they knew about their once great civilization. Their advanced technology and knowledge had once made them a vital part of the galaxy, but now they were nothing more than a forgotten people. Mira had expected the Xylar to be bitter or angry, but they weren't. Instead, there was a quiet sadness that hung over them, like a shadow. The Xylar had lived in isolation for so long that they had almost given up hope of ever being found. But now, as the humans worked to repair their old systems, a spark of hope began to return. The crew quickly learned that the Xylar were more than just a dying race. They had a unique way of thinking and problem-solving that no other species could match. Their minds worked in patterns that were completely different from humans, and they had once used this to create incredible inventions. But over time, their society had fallen apart when their technology became outdated and the other civilizations they had helped turned away. Mira sat down with the Xylar leader, a wise elder named Corin, who had seen the rise and fall of his people. His face was lined with age, his eyes tired, but there was still a flicker of intelligence in them. Mira knew that understanding the Xylar's past would be key to helping them rebuild their future. "You speak of your people's past," Mira began, "but I don't think we fully understand how you ended up in this state. Why did the galaxy turn its back on you?" Corin's eyes darkened, and he let out a long, weary sigh. "Our people were once the architects of peace. We share our knowledge, our technology, with every civilization that needed it. We built energy sources that powered entire star systems. We created medical technology that saved millions. But as the years went by, our inventions became outdated. New technologies emerged, and our contributions were no longer needed." Mira listened carefully, sensing the deep pain in Corin's voice. She knew that the Xylar's downfall hadn't been caused by their own failure, but by the failure of other species to recognize their value. "We were abandoned," Corin continued. "The other civilizations turned away, claiming that we were no longer useful. They left us to fade into the shadows. And we let them. For too long, we believed their lies, that we were no longer important, that we no longer mattered." Mira felt a surge of anger rise within her. How could any civilization be so heartless? How could they just leave an entire people to die when they had once been their most trusted allies? But there was no time for anger. There was work to be done. "Corin, we don't believe you're useless," Mira said firmly. "We've seen what you're capable of. You have knowledge that no one else has, and we want to help you bring that knowledge back to life." The Xylar leader looked at her with a mix of surprise and hope. "You would help us, even after all this time?" Mira nodded. "Yes, we've seen your strength. You have the ability to rebuild, to rise again. But you need the right resources, and that's where we come in. We can help you." Corin was silent for a moment, his thoughts clearly racing. Finally, he spoke, his voice soft. "I want to believe you, Captain, but I am afraid. Fear has been a part of us for so long. We are so small now. And the galaxy, it is vast and unforgiving." Mira placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We'll face it together. We won't leave you behind. I promise." As the days turned into weeks, Mira's crew worked alongside the Xylar, repairing the damaged infrastructure and trying to understand the intricacies of their technology. The Xylar were skilled, but they were weak. They needed help to regain their strength. The humans shared their own knowledge with the Xylar, teaching them new methods of farming and energy production. Earth's technology was not as advanced as the Tylars, but it was practical. It could help them survive. It was a start. Slowly, the Xylar began to recover. They weren't as strong as they had once been, but they were not completely helpless. They had hope now, something they hadn't had in a long time. During one of the sessions, Mira was introduced to Lyra, a young Xylar woman who was one of the few who had not lost hope. She had spent most of her life in the ruins, trying to preserve the knowledge of her people. Lyra's eyes sparkled with intelligence, and Mira saw a reflection of her own drive in the young woman. "We have a lot to learn from you," Lyra said to Mira, "and we have much to offer in return. Our past, our technology, it could change everything. We just need time." Mira smiled. "Then we'll give you time. Together, we can make sure your people don't fade away. Not this time." The team worked through the long hours, their bond with the Xylar growing stronger every day. There was still much to be done, but Mira knew that with patience, determination, and a little bit of hope, they could help the Xylar rise again. And for the first time in a long while, she truly believed that the galaxy could become a better place for everyone, if only they were willing to fight for it. Weeks passed, and the small base the humans had set up on the Xylar homeworld became a hive of activity. Captain Mira Larson and her crew worked side by side with the Xylar, sharing knowledge and resources. The Xylar were still fragile, but they had begun to regain some of their strength. It was slow work, but there was progress every day. The humans taught them how to improve their food production, how to generate energy more efficiently, and how to stabilize their damaged infrastructure. But despite all their efforts, not everyone in the galaxy was happy about the humans helping the Xylar. The major galactic powers, those that had turned their backs on the Xylar long ago, were watching the situation closely. They were displeased by the humans' interference. The Xylar had been abandoned for years. Why should humanity be any different? One morning, as Mira and her crew were organizing a new shipment of supplies, a message arrived. It was from the Galactic Council, the governing body of the largest civilizations in the galaxy. Mira knew what the message would say before she even opened it. The message was clear and direct. "Leave the Xylar. You are in violation of intergalactic agreements. Any further involvement with the Xylar will result in consequences." Mira read the message several times, a frown spreading across her face. She knew the council had made their decision. They saw the Xylar as a lost cause, an ancient race that had outlived its usefulness. But to Mira, they were much more than that. They were survivors, and they deserved a chance to rebuild. She called a meeting with her crew. As they gathered in the command center, Mira's first officer, Jonas, spoke up. "We knew this would happen. The Galactic Council doesn't care about these people. They never did," Jonas said, his voice filled with frustration. "But we can't just walk away. We've made a promise to them." Mira nodded. "I agree. The Xylar are not just some forgotten relic. They're a living, breathing people, and they deserve a future. We can't abandon them just because the council says so." The crew sat in silence for a moment, each member thinking about the consequences of defying the council. Mira knew it wouldn't be easy, but she also knew that the humans had something that no other species in the galaxy had: compassion. They didn't turn their backs on those in need, and they weren't about to start now. Jonas spoke again, his voice more determined. "We've already made this far. We've helped them start over, and now they're depending on us. I say we stand with them. Whatever happens, we stay." Mira's heart swelled with pride at the loyalty and courage of her crew. She had no doubts now. They were ready to face whatever came next. "We're not leaving," Mira said firmly. "We're here to stay, and we're going to help the Xylar rebuild. If the council wants to stop us, then they'll have to deal with us." The crew agreed, and they immediately began preparations for the next phase of their work. Mira sent a message to Corin, the Xylar leader, informing him of the decision. She assured him that humanity would not abandon them. The Tylar, though hesitant at first, responded with gratitude. It was clear they were still afraid. They had been betrayed so many times before, and the thought of being abandoned again was a deep fear they could not shake. But Mira's crew was undeterred. They began working even harder, reinforcing their relationships with the Xylar, teaching them more about Earth's technologies and helping them restore the forgotten systems of their people. As time went on, the once fragile Xylar began to show signs of strength. They were not the same as before. There was no returning to the way things had been. But they were finding a new way forward. And for the first time in a long time, there was a sense of hope in their eyes. However, their efforts did not go unnoticed. Ships from the Galactic Council appeared in orbit around the planet, watching the humans closely. It was clear they were preparing to take action if necessary. One day, as Mira and her crew worked to repair a damaged power grid, a message came through the comms. It was from the Galactic Council's representative. "You are in violation of the treaty. You are interfering with an abandoned race and preventing the natural course of events." The message began. "If you do not cease all operations on this planet, we will be forced to take further action." Mira stood tall, her resolve unshaken. She turned to her crew and the Xylar, who had gathered around to hear the message. They were watching her closely, waiting for her to respond. "We will not stop," Mira said, her voice strong and unwavering. "We have chosen to stand with the Xylar. We will protect them, no matter the cost." The crew and the Xylar exchanged looks, but there was no fear in their eyes. They knew the challenge ahead would be great, but they were united in their cause. They were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for what was right. As the message ended, Mira knew that things were about to get even more difficult. The Galactic Council would not back down easily, but neither would humanity. The battle for the Xylar's future had only just begun. Mira stood on the observation deck of their ship, staring out at the stars. The message from the Galactic Council was still fresh in her mind. They had made it clear that their patience was running out. The Xylar didn't matter to them, but they mattered to Mira and her crew. There was no turning back now. The humans had made their decision, and they would defend the Xylar no matter the consequences. As Mira looked out into the deep void, a small voice interrupted her thoughts. It was Lyra, the young Xylar woman who had been working closely with Mira. Lyra had shown a natural understanding of Earth's technologies and had become one of Mira's closest allies. "Captain, the Xylar have been asking about the ships in orbit," Lyra said, her voice soft, but filled with concern. "They are afraid that the Council is planning something against us." Mira nodded. "I know. We've been preparing for that possibility. The Xylar have every right to be worried. We don't know what the Council will do next." Lyra's eyes darkened. "We're not asking for much. We just want to rebuild, to survive. But they've forgotten us, abandoned us. I don't think they care if we live or die." Mira placed a reassuring hand on Lyra's shoulder. "We won't let that happen. We'll protect you, and we'll fight for your future. You and your people have a right to exist, and we won't let anyone take that away from you." Lyra smiled faintly, her gratitude clear in her eyes. "Thank you, Captain. Your people have already done more for us than anyone else ever has." The tension between the humans and the Council was thickening, and the crew could feel it. The atmosphere on the ship had shifted from one of quiet determination to a more urgent, almost electric sense of anticipation. The Xylar were growing stronger, but they still needed protection. The humans were doing everything they could to help, but the threat of the Galactic Council loomed over them. Days passed in a flurry of activity. The humans and Xylar worked together, strengthening their defenses. They rebuilt the ancient Xylar technology, but with human modifications to make it more reliable. Earth's advanced methods of communication and energy production were integrated with the Xylar systems, creating something new, something that had never existed before. Mira was proud of the work they were doing, but the calm before the storm couldn't last forever. One morning, the alarms sounded throughout the base. Mira rushed to the command center, where Jonas and the rest of the crew were already at their stations. "Captain, we have multiple ships approaching from the Galactic Council," Jonas reported, his voice tense. "They're not responding to our communications." Mira's heart skipped a beat. The Council had made their move. She quickly surveyed the situation. There were at least a dozen ships, heavily armed, and clearly preparing for a confrontation. Mira knew that this would not be a diplomatic negotiation. The Council had come to enforce their will. "We need to prepare," Mira said, her voice steady despite the rush of adrenaline that was beginning to course through her veins. "Get our weapons ready. Make sure the Xylar are safe. We'll defend them." Jonas nodded, his expression resolute. "Understood, Captain." As the crew scrambled to prepare for the coming battle, Mira turned to the Xylar. Corin, their leader, stood at the front of the gathering, his eyes filled with both fear and determination. He had lived through the fall of his civilization, and now he was watching his people face another threat. "We've faced so much already," Corin said quietly. "We never imagined we would have to fight again. But we cannot let them take everything we've worked for." Mira placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're not alone in this, Corin. We will fight together. We won't let them take your future." The Xylar looked at her, a mixture of gratitude and hesitation in their eyes. For so long, they had been abandoned. They had learned to live in fear of the galaxy's powerful civilizations. But now, with the humans by their side, they were ready to face this threat head-on. As the first wave of Galactic Council ships entered the atmosphere, Mira gathered her crew in the command center. She could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her. They were outnumbered, and the enemy's firepower far surpassed their own. But she knew they had something the Council didn't: determination, unity, and the will to protect what was right. "Listen up, everyone," Mira said, her voice ringing clear and strong. "This isn't just about defending a race. This is about defending the right to exist. We are not backing down. We will stand and fight for the Xylar, for their future, and for the future of all who believe in peace." The crew responded with a chorus of agreement, their faces set with determination. They were ready. Together, they would face whatever came next. As the first shots from the enemy ships rang out, Mira knew that this was just the beginning. The storm had arrived, but she would not let it destroy the hope they had fought so hard to rebuild. The humans and Xylar were ready to stand together, no matter the cost. The sound of alarms echoed through the ship as Mira Larson stood in the command center, her eyes fixed on the holographic display in front of her. The Galactic Council's ships were closing in fast, their weapons charging. Mira could feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy like a storm about to break. "Captain, they're targeting our shields," Jonas reported from his station, his voice steady despite the pressure. "If they fire now, we won't be able to withstand the blast for long." Mira's mind raced. The Xylar were still vulnerable, not yet fully recovered from the devastation their planet had endured. They couldn't afford to lose their only chance for survival. But Mira knew that the humans, despite being outmatched, wouldn't back down. "Set course for the lid ship," she said, her voice calm but firm. "We'll make them see that we're not giving up." Jonas gave a quick nod, understanding the strategy. Their ship wasn't equipped to fight a full-scale battle against the Council's fleet, but they could still cause enough disruption to give the Xylar time to prepare for what was to come. It was a dangerous move, but it was their only option. As the ship lurched into motion, Mira turned to her crew. "Stay focused. This is our moment to show them that we won't be intimidated. We're here for the Xylar, and we will protect them at all costs." The crew members nodded in unison, their faces set with determination. The humans might have been outnumbered, but they were not afraid. Meanwhile, on the surface of the planet, the Xylar were preparing as well. Corin and the other leaders had gathered the remaining population in hidden bunkers, ready to defend themselves if the situation became dire. The Xylar had long known the taste of fear, But now they were beginning to feel something else. Hope. Lyra, the young Scylar who had become close to Mira and the crew, stood by the communications panel, sending messages of reassurance to the Scylar. "We have not given up," she said, her voice clear and full of resolve. "We will fight. The humans are with us. We will rebuild, and we will not be broken." As the human ship approached the first of the Galactic Council's warships, Mira couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. The Scylar had faced countless obstacles and betrayals, but now they had a chance to stand alongside a race that truly cared about their survival. The enemy ships fired first, their powerful beams of energy lighting up the space around them. Mira's ship rocked as the shields absorbed the first wave of blasts. The crew braced themselves, but the ship held steady. "We've got this," Mira shouted to her crew. "Return fire. Disable their weapons." The ship's weapon systems hummed to life as the humans fought back. The battle raged on in the depths of space, a testament to the resolve of the humans who had chosen to protect the Scylar, no matter the odds. As the skirmish continued, Mira kept her eyes on the holographic display. The Council's ships were powerful, but they were not invincible, and with every strike, the humans proved that they had something the Council did not: the will to fight for what was right. Minutes felt like hours as the battle unfolded, the light of explosions flashing across the dark expanse of space. Mira's ship took several more hits, but it held strong. The crew worked together, managing to disable one of the enemy ships, sending a clear message that the humans were not to be underestimated. "We've taken down their lead ship," Jonas reported, his voice filled with relief. "But more are coming. We can't keep this up forever." Mira nodded, her expression resolute. "We've done enough. We've bought the Scylar time. Now we need to get them to safety." With the enemy's forces momentarily disabled, Mira made the call to retreat. Their ship, battered but still operational, turned away from the Council's fleet and made its way back to the surface of the planet. The Scylar would be able to regroup and continue rebuilding without the threat of immediate destruction hanging over them. As they landed, Mira watched the Scylar emerging from their shelters, their faces a mixture of gratitude and awe. They had witnessed the humans' bravery, and it was clear that the bond between them had grown stronger than ever. Corin, the Scylar leader, stepped forward, his voice filled with emotion. "You have given us hope where there was none. You have shown us that we are not alone in this galaxy. We will never forget what you have done for us." Mira smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "You are not alone, Corin, and you never will be again." The battle had been won, but Mira knew that the war was far from over. The Galactic Council would not take kindly to their defeat, but that was a problem for another day. For now, the Scylar were safe, and humanity had proven that they would stand for what was right, no matter the cost. As Mira looked out at the Scylar, she felt a deep sense of hope. The galaxy was vast, and the challenges ahead were unknown, but she knew one thing for certain: humanity had made a difference, and that difference would echo throughout the galaxy for years to come. The days following the battle were filled with tense silence. The humans and Scylar worked together to repair the damage done to the planet and prepare for whatever would come next. The Galactic Council's ships had retreated, but Mira knew that this was not the end. It was only the beginning of a much larger conflict. Mira paced the command center, her thoughts swirling. The Scylar had been saved, for now, but they had no idea what the Council's next move would be. The humans had done everything they could, but they were still outnumbered. The Council's resources were nearly endless, and they would not take kindly to being humiliated. "What's the status on the planetary defense systems?" Mira asked, her voice steady but filled with urgency. Jonas, the ship's chief engineer, was at his station, working through complex data. "The systems are coming online, but they aren't fully operational yet. We've made some significant improvements, but we need more time to get everything working at full capacity." Mira nodded, her mind racing. Time is something we don't have. The council will be back, and when they come, we need to be ready. She turned to Lyra, who was standing nearby, watching the exchange. The young Xylar woman had become more confident since the battle, her voice now carrying the weight of someone who had seen hope return to her people. "What do you think, Lyra?" Mira asked, her eyes softening. "Is there anything we can do to prepare better?" Lyra looked up, her eyes full of thought. "The Xylar have knowledge that could help," she said slowly. "Before the council abandoned us, we had some advanced technologies, but we lost them after the war. We've never been able to recover them." Mira raised an eyebrow. "What kind of technologies?" "Energy shields, advanced weapons, and systems that could give us an edge in battle," Lyra explained. "But they're hidden in ancient cities on other planets, places that have long been forgotten. If we could find them, we could turn the tide." Mira's mind raced. This was the opportunity they had been waiting for. If the Xylar could recover these lost technologies, they would stand a fighting chance against the council. The humans had already shown they could hold their own, but they needed every advantage they could get. "Where do we start?" Mira asked, determination in her voice. Lyra hesitated for a moment before answering. "There's a planet called Vyrath. It was once the heart of the Xylar Empire, but it was destroyed in the last conflict. The technology we need is still there, hidden beneath the ruins." Mira turned to her crew. "Prepare the ship. We're heading to Vyrath." The journey to Vyrath was long and treacherous. The crew worked tirelessly, repairing systems and preparing for the unknown. Mira knew that if they found the lost technologies, it could make all the difference in the war to come. As the ship approached the desolate planet, the once vibrant surface of Vyrath now lay in ruin. Jagged mountains and crumbling cities marked the remains of a once great civilization. The Xylar had built their empire here, but it had been shattered by the very council they were now fighting against. Mira stood on the bridge, her gaze fixed on the planet below. "Stay alert," she said. "We don't know what we're walking into." Jonas nodded. "The scanners are showing signs of interference, Captain. There may be ancient defenses still active." "I'll lead the search team," Mira decided. "We can't risk wasting time. Get the Xylar ready. They'll be our guides." Lyra, standing nearby, looked up at Mira. "This is where it all began for my people. I never thought I'd come back to this place. Not like this." Mira placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll make sure the Xylar have a future. This is the key." The team descended to the surface in a shuttle, the atmosphere thick with dust and ash. The once grand cities of the Xylar were now nothing more than ruins, but they still carried an air of mystery. What was hidden beneath the surface? What had been lost in the war? Lyra led the group through the crumbling streets, her eyes scanning the surroundings as if the ancient stones might whisper secrets. The rest of the crew stayed close, weapons drawn and ready for anything. "We're getting close," Lyra said, her voice trembling slightly. "The entrance should be just ahead." As they reached a large building, Lyra pressed a hidden panel on the wall. The ground trembled, and a doorway slid open, revealing a dark corridor leading deep underground. "We'll need to go down," Lyra said. "The technology is buried beneath the foundations of this city." Mira nodded and led the way, the rest of the team following closely behind. They descended into the darkness, the air cool and still. As they walked deeper into the ancient halls, the silence was deafening. The weight of history seemed to press in on them. Finally, they reached a large chamber, and there it was, the Xylar technology, dormant but still intact. Energy shields, advanced weapons, and control systems that could turn the tide of any battle. Mira smiled. They had found it. The Xylar had a future. But as they began to assess the technology, a low hum filled the air. Something had activated. "What was that?" Jonas asked, his voice filled with concern. Lyra's face went pale. "We've triggered an ancient defense system. It's not just technology we've uncovered. It's a trap. The hum of the ancient defense system grew louder, filling the chamber with a sense of urgency. Mira's heart raced as she looked around at the Xylar technology that had the potential to turn the tide of the war. But now, it seemed as though they were trapped in a forgotten defense system, one that had been waiting for centuries to be triggered. "What's happening?" Jonas asked, his eyes scanning the walls for any sign of danger. Lyra's face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. The system is old, but it was built to protect the last remnants of the Xylar Empire. If we triggered it, we might have just unleashed a trap. Mira quickly assessed the situation. There was no time to waste. The technology they had come here for was now their only hope, but it came with a great risk. "We need to deactivate this system before it does any more damage," she said firmly. "Jonas, help me figure out how to stop it." Jonas nodded and quickly moved to one of the control panels embedded into the wall. His fingers flew across the console, but the screen remained dark, unresponsive. "I can't override it," he said, frustration creeping into his voice. "It's not like anything I've ever seen before. We're not dealing with ordinary technology here." Mira's mind raced. She turned to Lyra. "Can you help us, Lyra? You know more about this technology than any of us." Lyra hesitated. "I can try," she said, her voice trembling. She stepped forward, her hands shaking as she examined the control panel. "This technology is ancient, and it's built into the very foundation of this place. If I can access the main core, I might be able to shut it down. But—" Her words trailed off, and Mira could see the doubt in her eyes. This was a dangerous mission, one that could cost them everything. "Lyra, we don't have time," Mira urged. "You're our best chance. You have the knowledge. You've already helped us so much. You can do this." Lyra took a deep breath and nodded. "I'll try." The room felt colder now, the tension thick as Lyra focused on the ancient panel. Mira, Jonas, and the rest of the crew stood ready, prepared to act at a moment's notice. Every second counted. Suddenly, the entire room began to shake. The ground trembled, and the walls seemed to groan under pressure. "It's reacting," Jonas said, his voice tight with concern. "We're running out of time." Lyra's fingers danced across the console, her concentration absolute. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she muttered under her breath. Then, with a sharp intake of breath, she looked up. "I think I've found it. The core is just below us. If I can access it, I can stop the system." Mira stepped forward, her eyes locked onto Lyra's. "Do it." With a final, determined motion, Lyra pressed a series of buttons, and the room fell silent. For a moment, Mira thought the defense system had already claimed them. But then, the humming stopped, and the trembling ground ceased. Lyra let out a long, shaky breath. "It's done." Mira's heart lifted, but it was only temporary. They had disabled the immediate threat, but the larger battle for the Xylar's survival was far from over. "Good work, Lyra," Mira said, her voice full of pride. "You saved us." Lyra smiled weakly. "We saved each other." But as the crew relaxed for just a moment, a new alarm blared throughout the chamber. Mira's eyes widened as the holographic display flickered to life, showing a massive fleet approaching from the sky. "They're here," Jonas said quietly, his voice filled with disbelief. Mira turned to Lyra, who had gone pale once more. "The Galactic Council," she whispered. The fleet that had once retreated was now returning, and they were bringing everything they had. The humans and Xylar were outmatched, but they had a secret weapon, the ancient technology they had uncovered. "We need to get this technology back to the ship," Mira said, her voice calm but filled with urgency. "We don't have much time." Lyra nodded. "I'll guide you to the exit. We'll get you out, and then you can use the technology to fight back." The team quickly gathered what they could carry, ensuring the most important components of the technology were safe. They made their way through the crumbling halls, every step echoing in the silence. Mira's mind was focused on one thing: getting back to the ship. The fight was just beginning. When they finally emerged from the ruins of the ancient city, the vast expanse of space stretched out before them. The Council's fleet loomed in the distance, and Mira knew they had only one shot at this. The humans and Sylar had to unite, or all would be lost. As they reached the shuttle, Mira looked to Lyra. "This is it. You've given us a chance. We won't waste it." Lyra smiled, her eyes full of hope. "Then let's make sure we take down the Council together." Mira nodded, leading the way onto the shuttle. The journey ahead would be difficult, but with the power of the Xylar's ancient technology, they had a fighting chance. The humans and Sylar had forged an unbreakable bond. And now, they would face the Galactic Council with everything they had. The final stand had begun.